Well, Western medicine, right, the definition of health is the absence of disease. But just because you don't have a disease doesn't mean that you're healthy, doesn't mean you're doing well, doesn't mean I have an optimal lifestyle. Nowadays, we actually know that 90% plus of your serotonin, which is thought of to be one of these brain hormones that helps with, depression or anxiety or trauma, is actually produced in your small intestine. So if I'm to give you a pill, or if I'm to give you acupuncture and I'm not addressing your gut health, it's disingenuous. You're not going to get better.
Welcome to the Mindfulness Experience podcast. My name is Keith Fiveson. On this show, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Jonathan Fields. He's a renowned integrative medicine practitioner. He's a martial artist, a visual artist, an author, and a speaker. He owns 2 clinics in South Florida where we met, specifically at the Wonderland Conference, which is a psychedelic conference. And he specializes in acupuncture, functional medicine, herbs, IV therapy. He really looks at the whole person, not only from an Eastern perspective, but also from a Western viewpoint, which is really why I wanted to have him on the show. He talks to Fortune 500 companies, trauma centers, and he works with pro athletes. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do too. Please welcome Dr. Jonathan Fields. Hey, I have Dr. Jonathan Fields with me. I am so glad to see you. What is happening, Jonathan? What is going on with you?
Just hanging out, working from home today, doing a little paperwork. Honored to be here on the show. I got a little break today in between the clinic and patients and everything else that's going on. But thank you for having me as a guest.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Now, you've really been involved in the integrative medicine area, and you're involved in, bringing these specific techniques into your practice. What inspired you to look at an integrative medicine career, and what kind of techniques are you using in your practice?
That's a great question, Keith. Mostly, I think my lifetime in the martial arts is kind of what got me interested in the first place. So
martial arts. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So about 20 plus years ago, my Qi Gong master was an acupuncturist. And anytime I would get injured training, I was in my early or mid 20s at the time. Anytime I got injured training, the acupuncture was very effective for me, for musculoskeletal stuff. And I started studying with him, and I spent many years interning in his clinic and working with him, teaching his seminars. And then about 12 years ago, I went through a period of serious illness. I got very, very sick, and I spent a whole year pretty much disabled. And I saw dozens of doctors and specialists, and all they kept telling me was, oh, it's on your head, you're fine, here's muscle relaxers, here's pain pills, see you later. And I knew that wasn't the way. I mean, I was smart enough, I guess, and lucky enough to not fall for that trap. After having another functional medicine doctor, a formulary, a friend of mine by the name of Reed Eckert, pretty much saved my life and turned that all around, I realized I had no other option. It was almost like a calling from a higher power to go back and help other people that are in the same situation. So that being said, I immediately pretty much enrolled in acupuncture school. I got my master's and my doctorate in acupuncture and Eastern medicine, herbal medicine, learned even more Qi Gong there. I've spent months at a time living at the Shaolin Temple in China, studying with the Buddhist monks over there, incorporating the Tai Chi and the Qi Gong and the meditation and the mindfulness and all the Taoist teachings as well. And I incorporated all that into my practice. So now I'm using the acupuncture. I'm certified in a bunch of different functional medicine titles as well. So we're using nutrients, raw herbs, all types of herbs. Now we're advocating for the psychedelics, of course. And depending on the patient, if it's something related to mental health, if they're anxiety or depression or trauma, PTSD, then I will incorporate mindfulness techniques, breathing exercises, even Qigong visualizations and things of that nature.
So you've got a lot to unpack there. I mean, I asked you, how did it all start? We go from Qigong to acupuncture, to various functional medicines. Now, let me help me to understand how does what you do differ from, let's say, Western medical philosophies, where you're working with individuals that might have PTSD and trauma? You had mentioned just sort of giving you medicine because you certainly, it sounded like you had a real physical issue. How does it work? I mean, everyone knows that you take a pill, you feel better, right? I mean, why is it that this works and the pills don't work?
It's an excellent point, and I wouldn't say that any one system or method works or doesn't. Unfortunately, the pills don't always work, right? We have a lot of patients coming in, and you're familiar with this, and they've been on pills for years, and they've tried every single pill that's out there, and it still doesn't work. And they may have already tried some of the mindfulness and some of the other things, and it's still not working. So to answer your questions, the difference between the Western allopathic model and what we do, both in Eastern medicine and functional medicine, there's a similarity there, is we look for the root causes. We're trying to find, why are you this way? Why do you have this disorder? Why do you have this chemical imbalance? Rather than you take this pill and it'll fix the problem, which rarely does. It may cover up your symptoms, but typically they'll come back with a vengeance.
So just so I understand it right, so we're really talking about, when we talk about it from a functional viewpoint, we're not talking about like one part of the individual, my digestive system hurts, or my back is bothering me, or I have a neck problem or something like that. In Eastern medicine, you're really talking about the whole person working together, an integrative part of that person. Integrative meaning complete and whole, right? So how do you go about doing that when you start doing your assessments of individuals? What kind of protocols do you use? Do you, is it involve on the intake? Do you tell me a little bit about that? Because, we do some mind, body, spirit kind of breath work and all that in my practice in integrative health and wellness, but you're really taking it to another level. So I really want to unpack that a little bit more.
So you are correct, and we are looking at the holistic system, the whole person. And that's another way that it differs from the allopathic Western model, right? Because you have a specialist for gastro, you got a specialist for OBGYN, and they don't believe the systems are working together, or they're not even reading each other's charts or checking the notes. We're the exact opposite. So going all the way back to the Wang Di Jing, which was purportedly written about 2,000 something years ago, and this is well documented.
Say that, going way back to the what?
To at least 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
The Wang Di Jing was the internal medicine classic from the Yellow Emperor, right?
Got it. Okay, good.
First book on Chinese medicine, and that's what we study in acupuncture school, and it's used still to this day. And there's a lot of good points that they brought up there. But the initial
wow, just think about that for a moment. You're using a book that's over 2,000 years old on a medical system that we today might think of as, just old. But today, what we're really seeing is acupuncture really being proven by science. So I just want to lift that up a bit and ask you to continue, please.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating. And they are, I'm glad you brought that up as well, because they are proving more and more things that we had considered to be,
woo-woo.
I guess Western doctors considered woo-woo or bogus or pseudoscience. I mean, we keep discovering new organs, new systems of blood vessels, things that we're like, oh, well, that was in the same book from 2,000 years ago, and you're just discovering it now. The other interesting thing are our process of integration, the process of bringing a patient in, right? The questionnaires and everything we use for acupuncture is almost identical to what functional medicine is doing today. So we go through system by system. So one of the observation methods, actually, when you first walk in the door, we're observing your Shen, right? We're observing your spirit. So how you carry yourself, how you walk. We're also making observations on your skin tone, your color, your eyes, how you smell, your body language, your posture. Then we begin by asking questions. And this is where it gets interesting, because we're going to go through every system. I'm going to ask you about your bowels, your urination, for women about their menstruation, their cycles. I'm going to ask you ear, nose, and throat questions. I'm going to ask you questions about your mental health. I'm going to find out all about your diet. I'm going to exercise if you're doing any, if you're not. how much water you're intaking. Do you like your water cold, warm, hot? We're asking about how you sleep. So all these things, what about your sweating? Do you have hot flashes? Do you have night sweats? Do you sweat at all? So all these things are taken into account. We're also taking a pulse, right? So in traditional Chinese medicine, we take your pulse, and there's 3 levels of pulse, and each position of the pulse, there's 3 positions, and each wrist and left and right is different, and they have to do with the kidneys and the channels that are being affected, the meridians. And we're looking at your tongue. We're looking at the color of the tongue, the shape of the tongue, the coating of the tongue, the consistency of the coating, the location of the coating, the different areas of tongue. We're looking at the sublingual areas of the tongue. I'm looking at patients' eyelids. I'm taking all these things into account. And then when you add in the functional medicine side, now I'm also looking in, this is where Western medicine kind of meets the traditional and becomes integrative. Now we have the blood work, and we have all sorts of advanced blood testing that doctors generally don't order, that on the functional medicine side, we could say, well, this was a little borderline, even though the doctor said it's normal, you obviously don't feel great. Where else can we find something?
So so let's break that down a little bit more, because I think it's great, first of all, and all of a sudden I found myself sitting up a little bit more, and wondering if my facial tone was whether or not I look like a pale old white guy. You
look great.
And all that. But when we look at the integration of Eastern and Western medical philosophies, how does it really help with things like PTSD and trauma? Because you're really looking at I talk about it in terms of, like, I break down breath. The root word of breath in Latin is spir, S-P-I-R, as in spirit, as in inspire, as in expire, as in aspire, as in perspire. And, you're really looking at the whole individual and how that individual is alive, right? It's not just about piece parts. So when you look at the Eastern and Western philosophies, and especially around PTSD and trauma, we met at the Wonderland Conference. You did a great job there. I was very impressed by it. I reached out to you. We had some conversations, and here we are. But a lot of people are looking at psychedelics as a way to go ahead and deal with trauma. So I'm trying to break that down a little bit, because I do understand that it's not necessarily about taking the pill or going to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor. It could be a lot more than that. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of where East and West meet.
It's a great question. I do have a background in working with trauma. I'm the Southeast Director for the American Institute of Traditional Chinese Medicine and Mental Health. I am also working with the Parkland High School that had the shooting incident about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm actually an alumni of that school. I'll be there February teaching a Qigong class for the 3rd or 4th year in a row now for the anniversary of that. They opened a trauma center there as well. For the first 2 years that the trauma center was open, I taught a Qigong class there weekly and Tai Chi, and did group acupuncture for PTSD. I taught art classes there as well. You okay? Just checking. And on top of that, I've lectured to trauma counselors at Barry University. So it is part of my expertise. And there is an interesting place where it meets. So from the Western perspective, right, it's all psychotherapy and medications that are pretty much mind-numbing. And a lot of patients don't have good results. They have side effects from the medications, everything from libido to weight gain to suicidal thoughts, right? So we don't have any of those issues with the Eastern treatment protocols. At the very worst, they won't work. You're not going to get it any worse. So the way we work with it, acupuncture helps, but like you mentioned, from the Eastern traditions, everything actually starts with astronomy and astrology. Then it comes down to the spiritual level. Then it comes down to the emotional level, then it manifests in the physical. So you are correct in the fact that if you're only treating the physical, as Western medicine does, or if I was to pretend my acupuncture is going to fix every problem that somebody with trauma has, it's not. You have to address emotions, you have to address the spiritual level. Astrology might be, out of some of our bags, so that might be a little more trickier.
Yeah, but you're really talking about, I mean, you're really talking about like someone's pakwa, right? You're talking about someone's like how they're energetically, maybe their year, but more or less how their energetic field is, because that's really around the whole element theory of why they are who they are.
Correct.
And how they tick, right? I mean, what is Qigong? What is, for those people who are listening who don't know what Qigong is?
So we keep mentioning it, and there's going to be varying definitions, and to very simplify it, this definition will not do it justice, but Qi we like to think of as our energy or our vital energy, which was once thought to be mysticism or woo-woo, but if you look at it scientifically, the whole body is all energetic processes, right? We're chemical reactions, we have thermal energy, we have electrical energy from the brain, muscle contractions, nerves. So it's all different types of energy. So it makes sense. And the gong is the practice or the skill of the cultivation. So
right, the cultivation of energy. Yeah.
Correct. It's cultivating longevity, or the ancients call it, immortality. But it's basically just strengthening the body, mind, and spirit. So you can have a lot of similar effects to yoga, but different philosophy, different background, different visualizations, different work.
So it's inner chi or energy, or the whole idea of wind. I mean, people talk about, the element of wind, because certain people are, have more energy and they communicate that. I mean, they don't even have to say anything. They can walk into a room and they have presence, right?
Correct.
I mean, right. So that's like energy, right? That's like a force field of some sort, yeah?
So, yes, well, that would be your Wei Qi, right?
Right,
that's
your Wei Qi.
Outside, your defensive force field, but then there's internal Qi for each organ, there's digestive Qi, there's your essence, your Jing Qi, Zhong Qi, your central Qi, which is your lung and your heart Qi.
And you're looking at all this stuff, right? I mean,
correct.
This is part of your assessment.
So
but Western medicine doesn't look at that.
No, they'll
take your temperature and ask you how you doing.
Yeah. Well, Western medicine, right? The definition of health is the absence of disease. But just because you don't have a disease doesn't mean that you're healthy. Doesn't mean you're doing well. Doesn't mean I have an optimal lifestyle. So but that's part of the program. So if you're looking, and now that we know, that's actually what my panel was at Wonderland, was how does gut health affect mental health?
Yeah, your microbiomes.
Yeah, right. So we know now that we look at all the studies that just came out on the SSRIs and how for 50 years we've been prescribing Lexapro and all these, lithium and all these things, thinking it's a chemical imbalance. And now they came out with a study saying, oops, we were wrong about that whole process and how it affects serotonin this entire time. Nowadays, we actually know that 90% plus of your serotonin, which is thought of to be one of these brain hormones that helps with, depression or anxiety or trauma, is actually produced in your small intestine. So if I'm to give you a pill, or if I'm to give you acupuncture, and I'm not addressing your gut health, it's disingenuous. You're not going to get better in the long term.
Right. So it's sort of like garbage in, garbage out, right? You're not eating right.
You are what you eat.
Thing. You are what you eat. And then based on that person, so you're looking at the whole person based on that whole person's energy, and based on their, I don't know whether or not it's their Shen or what other, term you have. You have a lot of terms there. You've lost me, Jonathan.
Right, and Shen, once again, for those who aren't familiar with the Chinese medicine, I'm sorry, I'm taking it for granted because you are you're familiar. Shen is your spirit, right? Yeah. That's how we're kind of looking at people, which is not just your soul, but also how you carry yourself. Like you said, your presence, right? If somebody's very depressed, if somebody has poor posture, usually that's a good indication they're not in good health. If somebody walks in with their chest up, they're smiling, their eyes are bright, right? We could say your Shen is very, very pronounced. It's very healthy, and you don't have any what we would consider internal demons if you're looking at from a 5-element perspective, or aggressive energy, or things of that nature. So that is all part of how we deal with the PTSD and the trauma. We're going to look at addressing the spirit. We're going to look at addressing the gut health. We're going to look at things like circulation, right? If you don't have good circulation, if you're sitting on a couch all day, if you're sitting at a computer all day, if you're in your car all day, right, your hormones from a biomedical standpoint aren't going to function properly anyway, which is why the Qigong and these kind of exercises from the very beginning were more or less invented, or they were used to keep the energy in the body of the monks, right, healthy, so they could meditate all day. Because just sitting around meditating all day will make you very sickly.
Right. Now, let me ask you a question, since we sort of move towards meditation. How do you incorporate things like mindfulness into, the integrative medicine practice? And, when you're treating clients that might have PTSD or trauma or any other area, how does mindfulness play in that?
That's the fun part, right? It's so while I may have a patient on the table, if I'm doing an acupuncture treatment, or if they're scared of needles and right, for trauma or whatever reason, or if I'm doing a group class, I'll walk them through it. Initially, we'll just start with the very, very basic. And it depends patient by patient. It depends how open they are to it, right? I'm not going to throw around Chinese medicine terms or Qi Gong things if I think they're overly religious, or if I think that they're not into any of the woo-woo stuff. So it's part of the play is how to work it into the conversation and make them feel comfortable about it and make it convenient. Because if I tell a patient to go home and meditate for 20 minutes a day, they're not going to do it.
Right, but you can tell them to breathe, right? You can give them breathing practices. Yeah.
Bingo. So I usually start them with a practice in the clinic or at the group class. I'll start them off with very simple, right? Just diaphragmatic breathing, abdominal breathing. As we progress, I might walk them into different visualizations like golden light filling the body, everything from microcosmic orbits visualizations, right? Dragging the energy down, up over your spine, and then down
from
the
the
front
pelvic
side.
floor all the way to the crown, right?
Exactly, up your governing vessel and your conception vessel, or your Du and your Ren, as it would be in the Chinese medicine. So I'll incorporate things like this. We use like 4-7-8 breathing or box breathing, 4-4 breathing, and then I'll give them little bits at a time to take home and do with them, right? And then sometimes we might, from the Qigong standpoint, we might teach them exercises to do with it, where one exercise might represent a certain channel or organ or meridian that I think is blocked. So if one patient might have PTSD, but they might present with more liver qi stagnation, which is like an energy blockage, I may give them an exercise, a Qigong exercise, that's specifically to break up the blockages and encourage flow of liver qi, or to course the liver qi, to soothe in the liver qi. Where another patient, if it's a heart qi deficiency, they might get a different exercise, right? And they might get different herbs, and they might get different acupuncture points as well. So that's the interesting thing about this. It is geared and customized to the individual, as opposed to this pill works for anxiety, you take this. If that doesn't work, you're screwed, right? Or maybe we have 1 or 2 more pills, but that is not going to fix these people's problems usually, especially with things like PTSD, because I think the statistic on it is about 7% of the population, I think, is susceptible to having the post-traumatic disorders after being exposed to an incident. So while 93% of us might kind of move past it, you have people that get stuck in this repetitive negative loop. It's almost like an OCD thing of the trauma happening over and over again, and they could get triggered very easily. So we have
the numbers from a societal perspective are much higher in terms of, we're talking about big T versus little T trauma, and and how it manifests itself often as in aberrant behaviors. You drink it, drug it, eat it, sex it, spend it, whatever, to go ahead and ease the pain or soothe the pain, but then that winds up in a lot of cases to the smaller percentage with some disembodiment, right? And that becomes the problem. That's what you're really working on, right?
Well, both, because sometimes it might manifest. You're right. There's all these micro traumas that we experience throughout our lives, while it be from our parents or school teachers or bullies or whatever it is, that will affect us, and it will manifest differently in different people. So for one person, it might just be anxiety. For the next person, it might be IBS. For the next person, and if somebody comes in and they have acid reflux, you can't just give them a beta blocker that's going to block all, or something that's going to block all their acid production, because then you're damaging other components. Right? The body works on these negative feedback loops. So now if you're not producing acid just because you have too much acid, because that's what the GI decided you should take for the rest of your life, even though the pill is only meant to be taken short term and they're ignoring that warning, now for the rest of your life, all the food you eat, you're not absorbing the nutrients and you're going to have digestive issues. because you're not breaking it down properly and you're not eliminating it properly.
Oh man.
So you're trading one problem for far worse other problems.
Right. So what we're really doing here is we're really looking at not treating dis-ease. We're looking at treating the whole person from an integrative viewpoint, helping them to feel healthy. So we're treating individuals for health rather than for sickness, right? Your focus is really helping individuals to be healthy and helping them to live a complete, whole, balanced life in that respect, right?
Thank you. And that goes right back to the root cause, right? If the root of the tree is poisoned, I can't trim the branches or cut a few leaves off and be like, problem solved. So we got to treat the root cause, which will eventually cause the branches to be healthy. Now we're going to treat the branches as well. If somebody comes in with PTSD or anxiety or depression, right, we're going to work on that, but we have to address the root cause. Otherwise, they will never get better and stay better, which is not a profitable model for the allopathic Western system, right? Because they want you to stay on the drugs forever because it's more profitable. You're a lifetime customer. We work the opposite. We try to graduate people out of our programs. Otherwise, we haven't done our job if you're not getting any better. If you got to keep coming to me forever, I'm not doing a great job. You need to try something else. And then we thrive on referrals because we actually do well for the patients and care about the long-term care of the patients.
So I have a question for you, since you started bringing up trees and the root cause of the tree and so on and so forth. So, and we talked about this in terms of microbiomes. We talked about it in terms of herbs. Tell me a little bit, because we met at the world's largest psychedelic conference at Wonderland, and I'm wondering, when we start breaking that down, what are the things that people can take? Not that you're advocating anything specifically, but I'm just wondering, we start talking about like mushrooms, right? And we're talking about whole functional mushrooms, herbs. What kind of herbs? What are the things and I imagine that it's not just sort of a one pill, one herb fixes everyone. And how do you go about, taking a look at that for the individual?
That's a good question. And the one pill fixes anyone. That's what I'm afraid of. We're starting to see a little bit of that in the psychedelic space as well, with the over commercialization and everybody kind of jumping in on it, saying, oh, well, if you just microdose, or if you just go to my ketamine clinic for the rest of your life, that's going to fix all your problems. Right. Also disingenuous. Now, there is going to be some trial and error, and we're going to have to find what works for everybody. And 100%, I am a major advocate for psychedelic therapies, and I'm advocating for research and for use in clinical settings. I don't think everybody should just be self-medicating and getting doped up, because then we have that same problem like we talked about before, to escapism. But unfortunately, I'm a licensed herbalist. I'm a licensed primary care provider, and I cannot prescribe natural herbs that can be grown at home or anywhere to my patients who are having this PTSD or anxiety. So I'm upset about that, and I'm advocating for the research, and I'm hoping to see more change. Right, there's a couple of states that have started already. We're behind, and to answer your question, I think it's going to be a trial and error basis. Now we know.
Okay, so we're talking about psychedelics now specifically.
Correct.
You're okay.
Absolutely.
Not talking about like herb from an herbalist viewpoint.
No, I'm talking about cannabis, psilocybin, MDMA. Ketamine, bufo, right? All these kinds of, and the list goes on. Peyote, Wachuma, right, or San Pedro. All these things. I've seen patients, and we've all heard stories of people who've had incredible healing experiences, and have been able to shed lifelong issues of serious trauma, suicidal thoughts, depression. They're much cheaper and they're more cost effective. They have a much higher safety profile than the medications that are out there. They don't encourage suicidal thoughts. They don't cause long-term digestive issues like some of the medications that are out there. So I think per patient, I think they'd really have to try, or we know from research that maybe the ketamine might be better for depression, or the MDMA might be better for PTSD.
Right, but I
So
think your points. I think the point you're making is a very, very valid one. Like, if you're going to do it, don't just sort of go anywhere, do anything. If you're going to do it, and it's not a recreational thing, even though I don't, I really don't support recreational use per se. But I think for an individual that's dealing with trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder, if you want to go ahead and cure it. I'm a member of the Heroic Hearts Project. I'm a healthcare ambassador. We work with vets. I mean, that's an ideal case where, you can look at these psychedelics and work with qualified individuals to go ahead and treat it. Now, it's not like you can go to the pharmacy and just pick something up. And even in those cases, we know that doesn't always work, right?
Right, well said. And yes, and I'm not against people experimenting a little bit or microdosing, but I think if you have serious issues and if you've already tried some of these things and they're not working, that is when they need to get with somebody like yourself or myself or some kind of mental health professional or somebody that practices the integration of these, or even one of these ceremonies where you can be guided through it and get some professional help. And I think you will get better results that way, rather than I read something online that this is good for me. Yeah, maybe not. But
then you go online, you buy something from the underground. Next thing you know, you've got some real problems. Yeah.
It's scary, right? Because nowadays, I mean, everything is laced with fentanyl, right? I mean, you could pick up a Percocet or whatever, or anything that should have just been not problematic, and then yes, it could kill you. And you don't know the quality, right? There's no regulation in the black market. So even if you could find a trusted source, whether it be a friend or a shaman or whatever, I think it's definitely better than, yes, you don't want to buy online on Instagram.
Right. So, okay. So we've got the psychedelics put aside, but if I go to you and I say, listen, Jonathan, you've taken a look at me, you've done your evaluation. It's clear that I have some energy issues. I have some dietary issues. What do you wind up doing? Do you wind up giving, herbs? Do you wind up providing, take some of this? And I know I'm asking you a general question. I'm just trying to break it down to, we look at the mind, the body, the spirit, what you're intaking in terms of your fuel, how you're sleeping, and then how you're clearing up your relationships and your environment, and what your aspirations are. What are you really opening yourself up to or aspiring towards? And I'm just wondering, from your view, in terms of how you break it down for the individual, do you help walk them through a lot of this stuff in terms of their fuel, their diet, their exercise? And do you break that down in terms of a prescription or some kind of a model?
Yes, you're right. It is a lot. It is very comprehensive, and it depends. And typically, as you know, somebody's probably been practicing Qi Gong for a while, right? We got to give that information in tidbits. Because if I drop all that on you in your first session, it's going to be overwhelming, usually. So I will usually make a few recommendations per session, right? So you might come in, I might make 1 or 2 dietary recommendations. I might give you an exercise or a breathing exercise to do. I might give you some herbal medicine or some vitamins, some supplements, and I might give you all that at once, right? And then we'll track your progress. I'm a little different than some of the functional medicine practitioners. That was one of my gripes with functional medicine in general. It seems like whatever you have, you need like 10 bottles of vitamins, right? So I was trained a little more conservatively than that. I like to go 1 or 2 things at a time, figure out what's working for you, what's not working for you. If you overload somebody on stuff like that, they become overwhelmed. You get a fatigue from taking so much different stuff. It's hard to follow too strict of a schedule or too strict of a diet. So before we put you on a Whole30 diet or make you eliminate every single thing you like to eat, we're going to start with the basics. So so that's where it comes to the root cause. So my job, and that's the art and the science
so what
of
specific herbs might you say are the basics?
Oh, wow. So I use hundreds of different herbs, and it varies from person to person. So it's another very good question. Very basic, like stuff that you could do at home might even be ginger, cinnamon, green onions, citrus peels. I might tell you make tea with, tangerine peels, things like that. But generally in the clinic, we're going to customize and mix herbal formulas where I'm going to have granules or powders, or actually behind me, there's a bunch of raw herbs you can see in my home clinic there. Oh, camera's tracking me. But that depends. I mean, you might have a formula that has 40 different herbs or 12 different herbs, and that's going to vary on your constitution. That's where we look at your body type and your root cause. So, right, if you and I both have depression and your body type is you're hot all the time, and maybe you're more phlegmy and mucusy, and let's say I'm very cold and thin and dry, your prescription is going to be vastly different from my prescription. It's going to match your body type, your constitutional, your personality, your root cause, and whatever deficiencies or excesses we see within the channels, within the organs, and within your yin and your yang.
So, let me just get some insights here. When you take a look at an individual and we start taking a look at Eastern medicine and methods, and we combine that with Western medical approaches, are there specific things that you would look at? I mean, for that individual, if again, I might, to your point, I guess it really depends, right? That's the consultant answer. If I'm overweight and heavy versus, thin and frail, you're going to look at different, herbs or different approaches towards generating, helping that person to generate qi or reduce the amount of qi that they've got. Is that pretty much it?
Yes, but then there are some basics on the Western side too, right? If you come in, and so we have this 2,000 plus year history that's documented with the herbs and the acupuncture and all that. So we are working off that. But if you come in and your vitamin D levels are low or your iron is low, I'm not gonna dick around and be like, well, this herb will fix every problem you ever had. You're still going to get your herbal prescription, but I'm going to say, hey, look, we have this Western medicine, we have this modern science that is telling us this is a clinical deficiency that we can't see. In addition to what we're doing, you need that, right? You're going to need to supplement vitamin D, and I'm not saying everybody should do it or everybody should take iron, but it just varies from person to person. Maybe it's a B complex for you. Maybe it's digestive enzymes. Maybe it's probiotics. So that's the art and the science, and I think that's where I differ from some of the people where we're mixing the Eastern and the Western with the functional medicine, the herbal medicine, all that in one place. And I need to prioritize. That's my job as a clinician to see what's number one. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck with once again the model where it's like you're walking out of my office with 10 different bottles of pills, and I'm not going to do that to
Got it. So it's very individual, it's very functional, if you will, and you're using both the Eastern model and the Western model to go ahead and really assess and inform, and depending upon the individual, really help them in different ways, graduate them in different ways, it sounds like. So you're doing this all out of, you have a clinic in Coral Springs, is that right?
I have two clinics in South Florida. I have one on the Tamarack Coral Springs border, which we're in Northwest Broward County, and I have a clinic with my brother, who's a medical doctor, completely Western, internal medicine and obesity medicine, board certified, in West Boca, where we're half clinic, half med spa.
Got it. And you're working with people who are dealing with back pain, digestive issues, hormone issues. What is that? Is that just sort of like not enough testosterone, not enough estrogen? What are we talking about? Hot flashes, or just tired, poor blood, or what? What is that?
So all of the above. We also deal with a lot of rare autoimmune stuff and other things of that nature. The hormones, it kind of depends if they want to address it through a functional medicine or acupuncture and herbal medicine, or if they want to go straight to hormones. So my brother, being a medical doctor, he actually does hormone replacement therapy and that kind of stuff. If they're coming to me and they don't want to do that kind of work, no, then we'll first address it from the integrative approach with the functional, the Eastern medicine, and try to figure out, yes, we might test it to see, yes, your testosterone is low or your progesterone is too high or whatever it is, but we're going to look and try to find out why. Because if we can fix the why, we might be able to fix that without having to actually take hormones. So I'm not a huge fan of that unless it's absolutely necessary. The thing I see now that is one of my gripes is, I have guys in their 30s coming in and they want testosterone. And I think that's crazy. Unless you have a valid medical
Right.
reason. Just
What are
you're
your
like,
thoughts about things like DHEA?
So DHEA being a precursor to testosterone, if you are clinically low and it's been tested, I think it's a lot safer and it makes a lot more sense to start there and see if you're getting the desired effects. But if your testosterone's low because you eat potato chips and watch 47 hours of Netflix every day,
and smoke too much cannabis, then
bingo, right?
That's it. That's the problem. So let me ask you a question. So I was interested in your background, right? Here you are, you've got this Qi Gong background. You went ahead and you focused in on acupuncture, and you became a functional medicine doctor, and all that. But you've got some like props, and like as a visual artist, you like a DJ. Did I get that one right?
Yes. So yes, thank you for bringing all that up.
Yeah.
Those are side hobbies that I've done semi-professionally almost my entire life. I've been painting and drawing since I could hold a crayon. I've done massive, large-scale public murals. I've had work exhibited in museums and galleries. At the Wonderland conference that we met at, I actually had some of my artwork displayed there. And on the music side, I've been DJing for about 27, 28 years now. I've DJed around the country. I've had music put into videos and DVDs and CDs back in the day that's been licensed for television production.
What's your DJ handle?
My DJ handle is DJ Trails, Trails, which kind of goes along with the psychedelics, right?
Yeah.
And,
all right. Good.
And the graffiti and the artwork. But what I'm doing now with that is I'm on the board of USA Break-In, which we are a national all-volunteer nonprofit for the advancement for the sport of breakdancing, which is going into the Olympics in Paris in 2024. So we've been organizing one of the biggest breakdancing competitions in the country, if not the world, in Miami for the last 25 years. And now we have a national coalition of promoters and producers who are focused on being able to make a league, much like the NBA or NFL, for dancers so they can have more career opportunities and be appreciated for the athletes and the artists that they are, as opposed to just a sideshow or a background dancer.
Now talking about good health, I mean, I imagine that, if everyone danced, if we all just danced, I think if ever, seriously, I'm being very serious because there's so much benefit from not only the physical aspect, but the music and then the social aspect. Your thoughts about that?
I think dance would probably be the number one outlet for expression of the spirit, unblocking emotions, like you said, for all those mental health activities, social, 100%. And what is Dao Yin and Qi Gong, if not a dance?
If not a dance,
depending on how you do it. But if you look at every indigenous culture and every old ancient civilization and ancient culture, right? Dance is heavily incorporated into their religious traditions and into their daily life because they recognized the importance of what that did for your spirit, your body, and your mind.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I wish we had more. I was raised in the 60s and 70s. Disco was it, man. That was it. And I don't know whatever happened to the discos. They've just sort of, I guess they turned into raves. I don't know.
The disco went into freestyle, and then it went into the electronic music, and I think you'll probably agree with me, and maybe it's just nostalgia, but I think the music in general, not that there isn't good music, but I think what's out there on the radio and the general population listen to, I think the quality of music has declined over the last 20-30 years specifically.
I grew up, the 70s was definitely king. As far as 1973, that was the year I graduated high school. It's the best year in music as far as I can tell.
Best era for sure. And it's funny you bring that up because with the breakdancing and the DJing, that's pretty much mostly what we play is funk and soul from the late 60s and 70s. And then some of the disco breaks and things like that with a lot of percussion. But that's the majority of my LPs that I still have and 45s is all like funk, soul, disco, and stuff like that. It was a great era, and that the percussion, the rhythm, that's what moves you. Right?
Yeah, the James Brown beat. You got 100%. That backbeat, 100%. So let me just ask you, this has been great, and we could go on and on, but when we start taking a look at kind of breaking all this down, we've talked about a lot of stuff. We've talked about psychedelics. We've talked about the whole body approach, using everything from herbs to food to movement to, looking at acupuncture and Western medicine as well, combining that with a functional approach. But if you were going to go ahead and break it down for someone who, at the end of this, just sort of walks away with something, what would you recommend for people in general who are looking to improve their overall well-being and, their integrative approach to working through any kind of issues that they might have?
Well, the top 2 or 3 or top 5 would be breathe, right? Take deep breaths on a regular basis, whatever method it is, right? Dance. Or get some exercise. I usually tell my patients, you don't have to do CrossFit, but you have to walk every day. That's number one. The fresh air, the sunshine, right? That's vitamin D. That's great for your mental health as well. Nature sounds have actually been proven to help people reduce anxiety and stress and things like that as well. So that's probably the top few. Look at your gut health. Look at what you're eating. Try to clean up your diet. And if you try all those things and nothing is working, this is the important part. That's when it's time to see a professional. That's when it's time to see some kind of integrative health coach, somebody like yourself or somebody like myself that can help you further and refer you out as needed. That's one of, I think, it's one of the problems with the Western medical system as well. Their doctors aren't referring, people come in, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, take these pills. Well, how about you refer to a personal trainer? How about you refer to a nutritionist? So find a professional, whether it be somebody who does holistic medicine, a naturopath, an acupuncturist, a functional medicine doctor, and don't get discouraged if the first 1 or 2 that you go to is not a good fit. It might be maybe their practice is not good, maybe it's not a good fit for you, maybe you have a personality thing, maybe one is too expensive. Whatever it is, don't get discouraged, and most importantly, out of all those things, never give up.
Never give up. Never give up.
You can always, you might not get 100%, you might not cure every issue you've ever had. Every single person has the ability to improve and improve greatly.
Great. I love that. So, Jonathan, how do people find out a little bit more about you and your work, and maybe get a hold of you? How do they get you?
Definitely.
Jonathan
if you want to
Fields.
find the websites, you could look up integrativemedicine.us. So just integrativemedicine.us. That's my clinic in Tamarack. The other one in Boca is CR8 Health. That's C as in Charlie, R as in Robert, the number 8, the word health.com. And you can look me up on my Instagram or Facebook at Jonathan M. Fields. And that's just JONATHAN, the letter M as in Matthew, Fields, FIELDS, at Jonathan M. Fields. You can find me from there. Be happy to talk, happy to point you in the right direction. We do free consultations. I have patients all over the world. We do telehealth with. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction at the very least.
Good, and watch out for the music, watch out for the art, and get a hold of Jonathan. So thank you very much, Jonathan, for taking the time. I've learned quite a bit here. I think I need to talk to you a little bit more about my own health.
I'd be happy to help. Keith, thank you so much. This has been an honor to be on the show. I love everything you're doing. I observed you running around Wonderland. I said, hey, this guy looks cool. Let me find out what he's up to. Stalked your LinkedIn a little bit, and I saw that we have a lot in common. So this has been a great opportunity, and I really appreciate what you're doing and spreading the light and helping people with all your practices as well. So I'm glad we were able to make this connection, and I look forward to possibly doing this again in the future.
Good. Hopefully we can change the world. We need it, right?
That's it. One person at a time.
One person at a time. Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness Experience podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We have other exciting guests coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. For more mindfulness tips and tricks, visit our website at workmindfulness.com. Thanks again for being a part of the Mindfulness Experience. This is Keith Fiveson.